And welcome back to Weather Center Live. We are tracking Tropical Storm Eta. And of course, one of the other threats with these tropical systems is severe weather. And so we do have a new tornado warning going for the next 10 minutes or so. This is for the counties of Manatee and Sarasota. And so these storms are racing to the north at around 60 miles an hour. So the radar has indicated a little bit of rotation. Of course, for the last few hours here, Alex Walsh and I have just been talking so much about how these spin-ups happen so quickly. So you really have to stay alert as these outer bands from Tropical Storm Eta continue to move through. So again, this tornado warning goes until 5 o'clock for Sarasota as well as Manatee. So if you're in that red box, you need to seek shelter immediately, putting as many walls between you and the outside world. We're going to continue to keep you posted on Tropical Storm Eta. Also on this Veterans Day, we honor those who have served in the military and are now doing their part to help with disaster relief with Team Rubicon. This year, the Gulf Coast has been hit hard by hurricanes. We went back to Lake Charles, Louisiana with the men and women known as the Gray Shirts to learn about their mission.
My name is Shane Fruget. This is our family home. This is the remnants of what's left from the last 4 or 5 major hurricanes.
It's been months since Hurricanes Laura and Delta tore through Lake Charles, Louisiana, and homeowners like Shane are still dealing with the piles of debris and damage left behind. Volunteer organization Team Rubicon seeks to help residents just like these with their teams of mostly military veteran volunteers who are looking to offer a little relief.
I think a lot of veterans, they lose that closeness to their teammates, their coworkers, and everything they had. And when they separate and get out, they kind of feel that they don't belong anymore.
Team Rubicon gives these veterans a way to reconnect.
Although I am still serving and stuff, I've got the first responders that are also with us and the civilians, and we all integrate together and leverage each other's expertise.
Because we said we were going to do it from the ladder.
They call their volunteers Gray Shirts, and they aren't known by their rank, just their first names.
Service comes up, rank almost never does.
With many volunteers having a military background, they are uniquely prepared for this type of work, even if they don't know how to operate a chainsaw or tarp a roof.
When they come to communities like this, they're really able to dig in and help communities that are impacted on their worst days because they already have that sense of service and that sense of selflessness.
Many are regulars with Team Rubicon, and some are relatively new, like Mike, who just retired from 29 years in law enforcement.
Being on the job so long, it's great to be a new guy again. It's fun to be starting over and learning stuff that I had no knowledge about.
Offering help to those in need has its benefits, not just for the residents, but for the veterans as well.
Tacking it down, rolling it down.
They've really gained that sense of purpose and that sense of community again, and then they stick. You know, that's why we have, growing numbers in our organization, and we're able to continue to recruit and to grow our force so that we can help communities.
Many volunteers say the hardest part isn't doing the labor, it's having to leave with so much work left to be done.
A lot of Gray Shirts that I know tend to come right back, and they continuously, they'll go for a week, they'll go home for a week, they'll come back to that site.
I couldn't think of a better way to keep that sense of service and purpose going once you're out of the military, once you're no longer in a first responder, than doing something like Team Rubicon.
And they come in to help. That says a lot. That says they're still good people.
And now let's get a live look at Tampa as we continue to track Tropical Storm Eta. Around-the-clock coverage here on the Weather Channel as it has its eyes set on the western coast of Florida for a second landfall. Right now, the winds are picking up there in Tampa. You can see those angry seas, and of course, those conditions are going to continue to deteriorate as we head through tonight and into tomorrow. Let's get you up to speed with the latest on Tropical Storm Eta, still with winds of 70 miles an hour. It, of course, has its eyes set on that second landfall just to the north of the Tampa Bay area as we head through tonight into tomorrow. And so, of course, we do have watches and warnings blanketing that part of Florida as well as into central Florida as again, too, and then even into the eastern side, too. So there's 70-mile-per-hour winds moving now to the north at 12 miles per hour as it closes in on the Florida coast. Now, what's interesting is as we turn the water vapor imagery on, all of the oranges and the browns on your screen, that is dry air that is starting to filter into Tropical Storm Eta. And so that's why on the eastern side, we've been talking about the heavy rain. But then after that crosses your area, on the backside of this storm with the dry air, there's not much going on. So a very different story on the other side of that storm. Now, there's a look at the track as it heads through around Cedar Key and also Spring Hill as we head through the overnight time frame into tomorrow morning and then crossing toward Jacksonville by Thursday evening. Around the clock coverage of Tropical Storm Eta continues right here on the Weather Channel.
Coming up tonight on Weather Underground, Tropical Storm Eta set to make its second landfall in Florida overnight. The Tampa area in the crosshairs for high wind and heavy rain. We're live in Clearwater, timing out the arrival and the dangers you should be aware of before it even makes landfall. And tornadoes not out of the question as Eta's rain bands will bring squally weather across Florida's peninsula throughout the evening. We're tracking the threat.
This hurricane season is so 2020, and we're not done yet. We're watching Invest 98L in the Caribbean trying to develop and could threaten Central America in the coming days. You'll recall that that's how Eta started out. And on this Veterans Day, we're honoring vets who've teamed up with Rubicon to help hurricane disaster victims in the Gulf Coast. Weather Underground starts right now.
Hello, everyone. Welcome in. You're watching Weather Underground. I'm Mike Bettis, and happy Veterans Day.
We're thankful for all the vets around the U.S. for their service and their sacrifice. I'm Jackie Jarris. We're with you an extra hour tonight on the show as we track Tropical Storm Eta. And if you're looking for Dr. Nab, he's on after us, right? 9 until 1 a.m. Eastern time.
We're going to be with you throughout the duration of this thing. So let's buckle in, folks. Weather Channel meteorologist, of course, watching everything for you here tonight, including in Clearwater Beach, Florida. So let's get you there with Mike Seidel tonight. Mike obviously is one of the most popular beaches on the west coast of Florida. And when you look at the history there, haven't been hit very much over the course of the last century even. What are you expecting there?
We're going to get the wind, we're going to get the rain, which we have right now, and some of the rain will come down hard at times. We've already had as much as 3 inches down around Sarasota, Bradenton. St. Pete has had 3 inches, plus it'll be adding up, another couple of inches of rain. And we've had wind gusts as high as 60 miles an hour. That'll probably be about it. Now, as far as the tornado threat, it has lessened. It's not zero, but it's low enough that the Storm Prediction Center has made the call, at least as I checked a few minutes ago, not to extend the tornado watch, which just expired at the top of the hour at 5 p.m. Eastern. I'm out on the beautiful Clearwater Beach, the pristine white sand, and we'll zoom in, Austin Anderson behind the camera, out towards Pier 60. And you can see the surf out there breaking and rolling in. Now, we do have a storm surge warning here. Water could rise as much as 3 to 5 feet above normally high ground. Keep in mind, high tide plays into that. High tide here at Clearwater about 8:45 this evening. A couple of hours later, several hours later in Tampa Bay. But with this wide beach, we have no concerns with water getting up to the berm and then into the buildings. That just is not going to happen if indeed the surge does get that high. That's just the prediction of where the maximum surge that we could expect. Let's go to the radar. This really tells the whole story. The center of Eta, as of 4 Eastern, was about 85 miles southwest of Tampa. So it's moving north at 10 miles an hour. So you do the mathematics. About midnight or so, it should steam off to our east as it moves northeast. So it's going to make landfall, a second landfall. Remember, it went through the Keys several days ago, and that's going to be north of here tomorrow morning, maybe about sunrise. As it does head towards the coast, it's going to ingest more dry air, the wind shear, so it's already falling apart. It's weakening, and it will continue to get more ragged. We've seen that on the satellite loop all day, but you can see what's rolling this way. That band, very heavy rainfall, gusty winds, 45, 50, maybe 55 miles an hour, certainly in the next several hours in the Tampa Bay area, the Tampa-St. Pete area. And again, rainfall rates a half an inch to an inch an hour. Somebody may end up with at least a half a foot of rainfall from part 2 of Eta. Remember, it went out into the Gulf of Mexico, Mike Bettis, and now it has come back as expected. Well, maybe not expected, but it's 2020. Nothing surprises us anymore.
Expect the unexpected, ultimately, is what we've said.
Yeah, rainy. rainy, windy evening. May have a few power outages, but we'll get through this okay. Landfall tomorrow morning. Maybe coming in, now it'll probably still be a tropical storm that it quickly weakens and whips across the state and out into the Atlantic later tomorrow.
You know, Mike, if this is, from your pictures, if this is as bad as it gets in Clearwater and Tampa St. Pete, we'll take it. You know, we may, in essence, be dodging a bullet more than anything else. Mike, thanks for the update there. As Mike was talking about, we do have a bit of a weakening storm here. It was a hurricane earlier today. It's back down to a 70-mile-per-hour tropical storm, and we may continue to see that trend of degradation here. North movement at 12 miles per hour, and I really got to tell you, you know, landfall is likely going to happen late tonight, early tomorrow morning, but the worst of the weather is probably now. Okay, the low sitting right about here, and the trajectory is going to take this thing, you know, something like this, all right? Well, really, all the intense weather is right now, and as the storm continues to weaken, we think that the effects begin to come down incrementally as well. Doesn't mean that you're going to escape it completely scot-free. Somebody's going to get some flooding in their neighborhood. Somebody's going to have some wind that knocks down a tree and knocks out some power, and some places are going to have, you know, maybe a little bit of coastal rise. But all things considered, what 2020 has been, you know, this could have been a lot worse. You know, we've been watching for tornadoes as well with some of these squall lines, and you can see that right here through Sarasota, and they've extended this warning, by the way, Hillsborough, Manatee, Sarasota counties until 5:30, Bradenton, Ruskin, and maybe just east of Sarasota. Watch for a potential tornado in here. I'm going to show you the velocities here because I think you can pick out the rotation a little bit better here. It's right about there near Gulf Gate Estates here, and its current trajectory would take, oh, that just got a new scan, so it's right there now north of Gulf Gate Estates, and probably going to slide just east of Sarasota, but moving on a north-northeast trajectory here. So please, ground level of your home and get to an interior room and protect yourself from any debris and protect yourself from windows and broken glass as well. Now down to South Florida, Collier, mainland Monroe, and then Miami-Dade counties also under severe thunderstorm warning here. Likely to see some high winds with some of these squalls in here. That goes until 5:30 this evening. There's that band there. Then you get another band, then kind of three bands in essence with this. Now watch the system. Still offshore as we go late tonight, so sitting right about here. But then watch what's going to happen. We're going to get a trough that picks it up, and that's going to start a fairly rapid eastward movement. Here we are 6 o'clock in the morning making landfall and then pulling its way off eventually into the Atlantic. How much more rain do we see? A decent amount. I don't think extreme amounts. Again, the system's on the move, and it's going to start to accelerate here, so that'll reduce the amount of time we spend in some of the heavy rain bands. Having said that, rain is certainly possible for us here that causes some flooding across South and Central Florida. There's a look at the high-resolution future radar. We pick it up from there. Look at where this thing is likely by tomorrow evening. All the way over here and off the coast, working its way Thursday evening quickly away from Georgia and South Carolina's coast as well. There's a look at the forecast cone again. Look at the winds, 40 miles per hour by tomorrow afternoon or evening, Jackie. So all good signs for the future.
Definitely. The next couple of hours, though, is certainly going to be dicey, especially when it comes to the winds and the storm surge. High tide coming in the Tampa Bay area around 11:30 tonight, depending where you are on that bay. And that's when we could see some of the stronger pushes of water as well. The wind has been an issue today. In fact, we've got about 20,000 people in the state of Florida who are in the dark right now and don't have power. A lot of them are in Manatee and Sarasota counties, and we have some down into Monroe as well. Here's a look at the current wind gusts across the region, mainly 30-mile-per-hour wind gusts, but Tampa recorded a 52-mile-per-hour gust earlier this afternoon, and so did Sarasota, while Port Charlotte had a gust at 69 miles per hour. So that's certainly enough to cause some damage. We are tracking this line of thunderstorms that's moving through the Keys right now and across the southern tip of the state, and those storms at times are producing winds strong enough to produce some damage. So take those warnings seriously tonight, folks. There you can see the wind gusts across the region, generally between 50 to as much as 25 miles per hour. So you've seen your strongest winds here already into South Florida and into the Keys. It's really going to be strongest closer towards that center, which is working on making its closest approach to Tampa Bay right now. That center about 60 miles or so away from the coastline, and you're just getting in on some of those constant feeder bands. So there's the current conditions of the current wind gusts, 33 miles per hour. But going forward, I think between now and midnight is when we're going to get some of the strongest winds, and those could reach as much as 40 to 50 miles per hour. I wouldn't rule out an isolated gust here or there with some of the stronger thunderstorms, more likely around the 55 to 60 mile per hour wind gusts. But look what happens here. This all lifts northward by 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. Still seeing that onshore push, and that's going to lead to some storm surge still ongoing into the early morning hours. So we'll be going through a couple of different high tide cycles. So that's why we've got storm surge warnings in effect, where water level rises here could be as much as 3 to 5 feet, 2 to 4 feet also just to the north of Tampa. So still have quite a few impacts that we'll have to deal with moving forward. Now, Tampa is one of those areas that's particularly vulnerable to tropical weather. Meteorologist Alex Wilson explains why.
Tampa, Florida is very vulnerable to hurricanes. Many counties in the region are surrounded by water on up to 3 sides. The Gulf is relatively shallow. During a storm, the surge is pushed higher and higher. Once the water moves into Tampa Bay, it gets stuck. It has nowhere to go but up and over the land. An 1848 storm was believed to have only been a Category 1. If that happened again, let alone a Category 3 or 4, the water would be over a person's head and the damage would be staggering. An evacuation in this area could be a nightmare. The population here has grown by 600% since 1950. That's a lot of people that have to get to high ground on relatively few highways. Timing in an evacuation is very critical. If people do not respond quickly, roads become backed up and leaving becomes difficult. Most of the 3 million residents have never seen a hurricane in this area and may not understand the threat. Officials urge for residents to take threats seriously and move quickly when they say you need to go. Routes headed north and east out of Tampa will be jammed in any hurricane evacuation, and any hurricane making landfall near here will likely be going north and east as well.
All right, so let's walk you through the timing, city by city here, so you know what to anticipate. Let's start right there in Tampa. 25 mile per hour gusts happening now through tomorrow night. When could we see, tropical storm force gusts? Likely late tonight and then through tomorrow evening with another 1 to 2 inches of rain to come. Again, not extreme amounts of rain, and I think an amount that may limit the amount of flooding that we see. There could be isolated spots that flood, but overall, I don't think we'll see widespread flooding. All right, let's take it through this evening. Yes, at times there are going to be gusts that are 50 to 60 miles per hour, but notice the low still stays offshore for us here. We're going to get more of an onshore push as we go later tonight. That may cause a little bit more water into Tampa Bay itself. Winds could be 40 to 50 miles per hour. These again be the gusts. Backing off late tomorrow morning through about lunchtime. Notice the winds have come down about half as much, 20 to 25 in St. Pete, 25 to 30 in Clearwater, and 25 to 30 for us in Tampa, and down towards Sarasota, even less than that. You'll see the winds pick up inland, maybe a Lakeland to Orlando. Your winds are going to pick up and they'll come down a little bit later than a Tampa. But now let's go to Thursday evening. Look at the wind change in direction here. Now out of the northwest and light at this point. So we've got, tonight and maybe about half your day tomorrow before things begin to improve. Having said that, tropical storm warning still remain in effect from near Port Charlotte up towards Cedar Key and inland toward Ocala and Lakeland. Jackie?
And then we got to keep our eye on what's going on in the Carolinas, because all of this tropical moisture is getting caught up and really ushered and funneled into that region. We've got the cold front that's coming in from the west, and that's helping to lift all of that moisture. And we've had a lot of really heavy rain already today in parts of Georgia as well as into the Carolinas. So you can see those brighter cloud tops there, that water vapor where that moisture is getting lifted, and the heavy downpours have been coming down and causing some issues with water. We've got flood watches in effect all across the region. Not a good PM rush here for you in a place like Baltimore, D.C., Philadelphia, all along that I-95 corridor. There you can see we've got one flood warning just to the west of Interstate 26 to the south of the Columbia area. And that's going to be something we're really going to have to watch for the rest of the night tonight and through the day tomorrow. Stepping you through hour by hour through the rest of the night, notice how a lot of that gets lifted into the mid-Atlantic. And then here comes that next push as Eta gets a little bit closer into northern parts of Florida and trapping through the Big Bend area. Flash flooding probability in all of this whole green area. Notice with elevation into parts of Virginia and North Carolina, it's going to be a little bit more likely. So be aware and alert for that. This continues into the afternoon hours here on your Thursday, and still have to really watch coastal areas as we head into Thursday night and even into your Friday morning before we finally begin to sweep all of this out of here. But this part of the country area certainly has already had a rainfall surplus. This rain not needed, and this will likely cause more issues down the line. Not to mention, Mike, you know, as the storm or whatever's left of it continues to push through this region, somewhere right in here, we're going to have that persistent onshore flow continuing even into the weekend with king tides on the way.
Places here where we thought that we had put the tropics behind us and hurricane season was behind us, not quite yet. And then we go interior. You know, a lot of places here have very, very wet soil right now. We've had at least some remnants of something come through, it seems like, frequently. But notice this, flood watch is in effect here. That includes through Asheville and Boone, Charlotte and Hickory. You go through the triad or the research triangle, flash flood watch is in effect here. That includes the bright green areas, and Raleigh-Durham, we're in that. Charlottesville, Hampton Roads, up toward Washington, D.C. Look at all this rain that's forcing its way in right now. The thing is, we'll have some influence from Eta, but we've got the front back in here, all right? So there's the front sits back in here, and we've just got huge amounts of moisture. They're pooling northbound here, and so just a wide coverage of heavy downpours and thunderstorms. Rocky Mountain along I-95, we have the heavy rain, and watch the future radar here in eastern North Carolina. Getting hit again tonight in a place like Raleigh, up through Norfolk and Virginia Beach, and it just happens over and over and over again for us. So this is why we're concerned about the heavy rainfall threat and the flooding. Then once the front is almost on top of you, that's when the rain really starts to increase in the rate here, finally clearing out by late tomorrow, but not before potentially another 5 to 7 inches of rain is coming our way. That is about a month and a half to 2 months worth of rain in the next 24 hours or so. Again, almost all that happens now. With the front clearing through, you'll be dry after that. How about the rain still to come here? Place like Myrtle Beach, the Grand Strand, down toward the Low Country, 3 to 5 inches on the docket for us. Jackie?
Well, head on Weather Underground. We've got much more on Tropical Storm Eta and the timing of landfall overnight and early tomorrow. Plus, it's been a record-breaking hurricane season with landfalls. Tampa has been in the clear up until now. We're going to examine and take a look at why.
With the cap.
This record-breaking hurricane season isn't over. The threat from Eta is still complex and dangerous to the southeast.
Big rainfall stretching from Miami all the way over to the west coast of Florida.
No one can cover this historic hurricane season better than the Weather Channel. Get the information you need to stay safe all week long, right here on the Weather Channel.
Welcome back to Clearwater Beach, Florida. I'm meteorologist Mike Seidel. It's part 2 of Eta. Remember, we had the southeast coast, Miami, Keys, impacts several days ago. Now we're on the west coast of Florida. It's going to make a second landfall north of Tampa, and the surf is up. We've got a couple of surfers out here before it gets dark. Surfing in the rain, what does it matter? Water temps there about 80, and it's raining pretty hard across most of the Tampa Bay area. And on the radar, we still have that tornado warning. That expires at the bottom of the hour, just a few minutes away, based on a water spout that was sighted near Sarasota at the top of the hour. So hopefully that will expire okay. We don't have an extension on the tornado watch, but it's going to be heavy rain and wind. Look at this heavy rain from earlier. This is about 1:30 this afternoon here in Clearwater. One of those bands came through, one of those squally bands, and that was one of the bands that led to a couple of tornado warnings. We have not had any confirmed touchdowns, but boy, these water spouts could come in off the Gulf of Mexico as Eta goes by to our west overnight and then makes a landfall to our north. So most of the weather will be ahead of the storm, Mike Bettis. And once we get to midnight, we're going to be pretty much done here, I think, with a lot of the rain, but it will move up north as it moves onshore around sunrise tomorrow morning.
Yeah, very well put there, Mike. A lot of the real active weather ends up happening over the course of the next maybe 6 to 10 hours, and that would be on the kind of the higher end of it. So everything happening kind of before landfall. Mike, thanks very much. And more from Mike in Clearwater coming up here in just a little bit. But we know Tampa really getting his first taste of tropical weather so far this hurricane season, Jackie.
Yeah, and joining us now is Jennifer Hubbard. She's from the National Weather Service in Ruskin, which is on the south side of Tampa Bay. Jennifer, thanks so much for joining us. All season we've had 12 tropical cyclones that have made landfall in the U.S. A place like New Orleans has been in the cone more than a half a dozen times, right? What has that been like for you guys to kind of really getting missed so far this season up until now?
Yeah, we have had little brushes here and there, but for the most part, we've been very, very lucky in staying clear of everything.
Jennifer, the west coast of Florida is not one of the more likely locations for tropical systems to make landfall, at least according to your state. The East Coast is a lot more vulnerable. What makes the west coast at less risk than other parts of your state?
Well, just we're protected more. So, we get the early and late season systems coming in from the Gulf, but, anything coming in from the Atlantic really will get hit by the East Coast before it comes to our side. So that offers a little bit of protection for our side of the state.
But certainly Tampa has its big risk, so close to the ocean, but also the bay and all that storm surge can get funneled up in there. What is a worst case scenario for Tampa?
A system that's going to come in just to the north so that all of those winds are funneled right up the bay. Tampa Bay storm surge of 3 to 5 feet occurring with a high tide cycle overnight, and then just the continued rainfall. We've already seen 2 to 4 inches occur throughout the day today, and we can see an additional 2 to 4 inches occurring through the overnight hours as these rain bands just continue to move over the area.
So with Eta coming in now, certainly folks have been watching this as we've had that cone out there for days and days now. But do you think because it's been a quiet season for Tampa in particular, are folks still very prepared for this, or do you think they could become complacent?
Well, hopefully, just because it has been such an active season, everyone has still kept their guard up. It is quite late in the season, however, and fatigue has definitely set in. So we definitely hope that we have put the message out there that we need to stay vigilant and keep your supplies in order, and everyone's ready for this.
All right, Jennifer, thank you so much. That is Jennifer Hubbard with the National Weather Service in Tampa tonight. All right, let's talk a little bit more about Eta and what else is going on in the tropics right now, because if you look at the big picture, boy, it is still quite active, including Tropical Storm Theta way out here in the Atlantic, moving almost stationary at this point. And then we've got Invest 98L. Remember, down here in the Caribbean, boy, this is a hotbed for activity late in the season, and it was in the Caribbean Sea that we had Eta eventually form and come into Central America. All right, let's talk about Theta here. East-northeast movement. I know it doesn't look like it's moving all that fast, but if you look at the convection itself, the convection is not, but the center of the storm itself is shooting off to the east a little bit here at 13 miles per hour. Where does this thing go? It picks up speed, then it starts to slow down and get turned a bit here. Wind speed doesn't change all that much over the next, say, 3 or 5 days, but at this point, not forecast to hit land just yet. Unfortunately, what's going on with Invest 98L in the Caribbean is a little bit more concerning. Closer to land, 80% chance of formation here. We've got flood alerts here, including flash flood watches across the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. And watch where this thing is expected to form. In the Caribbean, remember, Category 4 Eta struck Nicaragua about a week ago. This is headed in that same direction. More on Eta affecting Florida when we come back.
Welcome to the
Eta packed a strong punch long before officially making its way back onto land. Not sure if this beach bus in Fort Myers was going to or from the beach as heavy rain and high winds flooded the streets there earlier today. Fort Myers also clocking some pretty intense winds at 53 miles per hour. That wouldn't be a fun bus ride. Well, thanks so much for staying with us here on Weather Underground as we continue to track Tropical Storm Eta. I'm meteorologist Jackie Jarris.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mike Bettis. We've got special live coverage for you tonight. We'll be with you till 1 o'clock a.m. tracking this system, likely to make landfall overnight tonight, early tomorrow morning. Eta, let's show you what we know right now about it, because for many of you, the impacts will be felt now. It's moving north along the west coast of Florida at about 12 miles per hour. It is right now maintaining wind speeds of about 70 miles per hour. The storm bringing Florida Gulf Coast some really heavy rain and gusty winds. Power outages beginning to mount in the west central part of the state right now. Local state of emergency has been declared in Pinellas County. That includes Tampa, Clearwater, and St. Pete.
All right, and speaking of Clearwater, our Weather Channel meteorologist Mike Seidel is watching the progress of Eta from Clearwater Beach. And Mike, a lot of the action has been just down to the south of you around Sarasota. What are conditions like where you are now?
Just some light rain right now and breezes gusting 25, 30 miles an hour at Tampa International. We've got a break in the rainfall, but it's coming back. You can see that on radar. Heather Zahns will get that on the air for us, and you can see how it's rotating around the circulation. Eta is offshore, moving northeast at 12 miles an hour right now. It's going to make landfall north of Tampa tomorrow morning, give or take an hour or so around sunrise. This is the water, the Gulf, and you can see the surface up. A lot of times you come out here and it's like a lake. Not today, not with this kind of wind, not with a tropical storm sitting off to our south and west. And as I mentioned, it'll go by. Once it goes by, we're going to really see things back off, the wind and the rainfall, because it's so lopsided. It's so asymmetrical. You know, we've seen this time and time again on the east coast of Florida. We have a system like this, and most of the rain and the worst weather stays offshore. Well, we're on the other side of the coast, so when it's east side loaded, we're going to get the weather, and we've already had several, I think 4 or 5 tornado warnings so far. The one we just had south of here has expired, and they did not extend the tornado watch. So wind and rain this evening. We're going to be watching that storm surge. We have a storm surge warning. Could be as much as 3 to 5 feet. At the worst case scenario, above normally dry ground, as high tides come in here about 8:45, and then between about 11 and midnight up and down Tampa Bay. We'll see how that shakes out. And then by tomorrow morning, we'll probably see some sunshine here in the Tampa, St. Pete area, and the system will go inland and then quickly weaken and out into the Gulf of Mexico. So Mike Bettis, the saving grace this time, unlike with previous storms in the Gulf of Mexico, no rapid strengthening as it goes towards the coast. We saw that so much this season. We've got so much dry air wrapping in and also the wind shear, but it was amazing to see that satellite photo and the convection just kind of fall apart and croak during the morning and afternoon hours. No complaints.
Yeah. Oh.
No complaints.
Not at all. Listen, we love our sunshine there in Tampa, St. Pete, no question about it. That in Clearwater, beautiful place. You know, one of the most visited beaches there in all of Florida. All right, so Mike, thank you for that. We'll get back with Mike here in just a second. Let's update you on what's happening with Tropical Storm Eta right now. It was a hurricane this afternoon, back down to tropical storm, 70-mile-per-hour winds, and I think we're going to continue to see the weakening now through landfall and beyond. North movement at 12. The low itself sits about right here, but all the really active weather is on the east side, and the worst of the weather is probably happening for you right now, prior to even landfall occurring at this point. But the landfall likely to go into the Big Bend of Florida and miss us, at least the direct landfall in Tampa itself. But I do think that Tampa does see the worst of the conditions. There's a close-up look at the radar. Really heavy rain falling for us right now from Sarasota to St. Pete, Clearwater, up toward Tampa here. Eventually that gets up along, say, I-4 as well, and then going up 75. Some of the heavier bands here could even produce some severe weather. We had a really intense line come through Sarasota with a tornado warning, and some of these certainly could produce that. Extending squall lines go well out beyond where Eta's center is, Miami-Dade County right now, under a severe thunderstorm warning. And this line of storms is going to come right up the peninsula here. Also is capable of producing maybe a brief tornado spin up. There's a look at the future radar. A couple of different bands will slide through. The low itself still sits offshore late tonight, but tomorrow morning coming onshore. So the low is probably sitting right over the coastline at this point with a landfall that might even happen pre-dawn hours tomorrow. Possible flooding to occur for us here. That includes south and central Florida here. Some places maybe upwards of another 3 to 5 inches of rain are possible for us. Where's the system go through the day tomorrow? Actually across the state and then sitting out in the Atlantic by tomorrow evening just off the coast of South Carolina. Once you stick around, a lot more Eta coverage when we come back, taking you back to Florida for the very latest, including how much rain we could see and how much flooding will persist.
Wind and rain from Tropical Storm Eta lashing Fort Myers Beach earlier today. This is part of the Florida that has seen 1.25 inches of rain since dawn. Winds have been really steady in the teens all day, and you've had some really strong wind gusts here. Recorded more than 50 miles per hour now in Fort Myers from earlier this afternoon. The rain continues to come down across the Sunshine State. In fact, around Sarasota, we're getting rainfall reports now up to 4 inches, but it hasn't been just Florida. We've had a lot of this tropical moisture feeding up into the Carolinas, into the mid-Atlantic, and that's going to continue over the next couple of days. That flooding is really becoming a serious concern here. Look at the rainfall forecast, especially east of I-95 here through the Carolinas and southeastern Virginia. We could get as much as 5 to 8 inches of rainfall. Flash flooding already ongoing, so it's kind of the 1-2 punch here. We've got that moisture coming in from Eta. We've got high pressure, which is off the coast here, and those two things kind of working together to pump that tropical moisture in there, and then the cold front comes in, helps to lift all of this. So the stage is already set with copious amounts of rainfall even before Eta really arrives into this region to give you that big punch. The drive home, probably not pretty in places like Philadelphia, Baltimore, and Washington, D.C., all along that I-95 corridor. Flash flood warning in effect for Appomattox, Campbell, and Pennsylvania, just to the south of the Lynchburg area, and a lot more rain to come. Well, tropical rainfall certainly makes for potentially hazardous driving conditions, but as Jen Carfagno reminds us, at this time of the year, with autumn leaves on the road, even a little bit of rain means drivers need to beware.
Let's talk about travel. You know, whether you're going back and forth from work or driving to actually go get a view of that great fall color, you know the weather is always a factor, even on a sunny day. So we're going to talk travel because in the fall there's a complicating factor, and that is the leaves. Let's take this car out into reality, or augmented reality, and talk about how the weather impacts your travel. Now, even when there is no weather falling from the sky on dry conditions, it takes about 80 feet to stop your car if you're driving at 45 miles per hour. And that, of course, is dependent on what kind of tire tread you have, what kind of road conditions they're like, but still 80 feet. Now let's factor in the weather. And, you know, when you've got these great leaves on the trees, you know the color's gorgeous, but all of a sudden they're going to come down and they'll cover up the roadway. They'll cover up any potholes or any bad road conditions that are out there. And also when it starts raining, now we got some complications. So the rain falls, you've got your wipers on, you've got your headlights on, of course, if your wipers are on, and now the leaves start getting wet. And you've heard the saying that wet leaves are slippery as ice. Well, indeed they are. Why is ice slippery? Well, there's actually a film of water right on top of ice. Same thing happens actually with your car's tires on these leaves. So take a look. You've got the car's tires that are hitting the leaves, and the leaves are on top of the road. Leaves have a waxy coating on both sides of them, and that actually repels water. Trees get their water from their roots, right? Not from their leaves. So the waxy coating repels water. That makes leaves very slippery. And leaves slip on leaves. Leaves slip on the road. Your car's tire slips on the leaves. And when there's layers of these wet leaves, the slick factor is exponential. You try to brake on this, you see the swerve, right? All of a sudden, you more than double your stopping distance if you're traveling at 45 miles per hour. And that's not a clean stop, is it? So if you're traveling, even if it stops raining and you've got leaves on the road, you know that it takes hours for wet leaves to dry out. You need to slow down, both hands on the wheel. Make sure you have some good tire tread on your car, and make sure you stay vigilant, because even when it's not raining, when you've got leaves on the roads, it could be slick as ice, especially if they're wet.
Now you know, folks, and always be careful. We know we are going to get hammered with rain through the Carolinas and up through Virginia. Wilmington, North Carolina right now, as the sun is set, 78 degrees and a ton of humidity in the atmosphere right now, and a ton of rain is coming your way. Flash flood watch through tomorrow. Look at this map. This is stunning. This is just through tomorrow night, so roughly the next 24 hours. Look at all this rain, and there'll be a corridor here almost right along I-95, say Fayetteville up through Raleigh. 5 to 7 inches of rain is still to come in the next 24 hours. I think it's almost a guarantee we have some flash flooding here. Even notice here, Wilmington up through Greenville toward the Outer Banks. 3 to 4 inches of rain in the next 24 hours. It's really intense, folks. And what you see now, see periods of heavy thunderstorms that hit you here. Those will just repeat themselves over and over and over again here through the next 24 hours. So watch this future radar prediction. More thunderstorms That's tonight. That's 11 o'clock tonight. Look at 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. More thunderstorms. 9 o'clock in the morning. Heavy, widespread thunderstorms. And then the front gets closer to you. As it does, it really maximizes the rainfall here. 4 o'clock tomorrow, we are in the thick of it, finally clearing out as the front comes through. We won't completely clear out of the rain till probably early Friday morning. So really tough go for us here. Raleigh, heavy rain in our forecast with wind now through tomorrow evening. Through 10 p.m. tomorrow. Then you take a look at places like Charleston. Our rain probably not ending until 9 p.m. So again, very rough go for us here. Please be aware that driving in high water could be deadly. Turn around, don't drown. We'll come up next here on Weather Underground. Veterans team up with Team Rubicon to help storm victims in the Gulf. We're honoring them on this Veterans Day. Plus, we're tracking dangerous severe weather in Central Florida tonight. A lot of it in association with what's going on with Eta. What's your risk for severe thunderstorms and tornadoes?
Right now.
As the sun goes down here in the Tampa-St. Pete area, we're dealing with Eta. It's round 2. We had the East Coast, Southeast Coast impacts a few days ago. Now we're getting the worst of the weather from Eta as it comes. It makes a second landfall north of Tampa-St. Pete around sunrise tomorrow morning. This is the Gulf of Mexico. We got a few folks out there taking some photos. We've had some boogie boarders enjoying the surf. And the rain, you know, it's in the upper 70s. It's not like it's a cold rain by any means here in the tropics. And what's going to happen is we've got rain and some gusty winds. You can see that on the radar. It's all rotating counterclockwise around Eta. Tornado watch has ended. We still could have a few spin-ups, but again, it's the worst of the weather just south of us. Bradenton, Sarasota, getting up towards St. Pete and all the way up towards Pinellas Park. Last hour, Bradenton, Sarasota had gusts to 52 and 3/4 of an inch of rain. So that's pretty healthy weather from a tropical storm that's on the decline. That's the forecast, Mike Bettis. And you've got the nuts and bolts on Eta here in mid-November. Please make it stop. I'm ready for a snowstorm.
You and me both, my friend.
Snow.
You and maybe all America right now would much rather have a snowstorm than a hurricane. Appreciate the report, Mike. Thank you so much. And hopefully we can get back, Mike, on some dry ground soon. We do have a 70-mile-per-hour tropical storm on our hands, sitting just off the coast here of Tampa. In fact, it's 65 miles west-southwest of St. Pete right now. So there sits the low. You could pretty easily pick it out, sitting right in there with all the moisture flowing, you know, counterclockwise around that. Really, truly, the worst of the weather is happening for you right now before landfall. We've got a tornado warning out there that's coming right past Sarasota, Manatee County under that tornado warning until 6 o'clock tonight. We'll zoom right down in. There's a little bit of rotation right in there, so right along 62 could be coming across there. We urge you to find shelter, an interior room, ground level, and away from exterior walls and windows. Jackie?
On this Veterans Day, we honor those who have served in the military and now doing their part to help with disaster relief with Team Rubicon. We caught up with the gray shirts hard at work in Lake Charles, Louisiana.
My name is Shane Fruget. This is our family home. This is the remnants of what's left from the last 4 or 5 major hurricanes.
It's been months since Hurricanes Laura and Delta tore through Lake Charles, Louisiana, and homeowners like Shane are still dealing with the piles of debris and damage left behind. Volunteer organization Team Rubicon seeks to help residents just like these with their teams of mostly military veteran volunteers who are looking to offer a little relief.
I think a lot of veterans, they lose that closeness to their teammates, their coworkers, and everything they had. And when they separate and get out, they kind of feel that they don't belong anymore.
Team Rubicon gives these veterans a way to reconnect.
Although I am still serving and stuff, I've got the first responders that are also with us and the civilians, and we all integrate together and leverage each other's expertise.
Because we said we were going to do it from the ladder.
They call their volunteers gray shirts, and they aren't known by their rank, just their first names.
Service comes up, rank almost never does.
With many volunteers having a military background, they are uniquely prepared for this type of work, even if they don't know how to operate a chainsaw or tarp a roof.
When they come to communities like this, they're really able to dig in and help communities that are impacted on their worst days because they already have that sense of service and that sense of selflessness.
Many are regulars with Team Rubicon, and some are relatively new, like Mike, who just retired from 29 years in law enforcement.
Being on the job so long, it's great to be a new guy again. It's fun to be starting over and learning stuff that I had no knowledge about.
Offering help to those in need has its benefits, not just for the residents, but for the veterans as well.
Tacking it down, rolling it down.
They've really gained that sense of purpose and that sense of community again, and then they stick. That's why we have growing numbers in our organization, and we're able to continue to recruit and to grow our force so that we can help communities.
Many volunteers say the hardest part isn't doing the labor, it's having to leave with so much work left to be done.
A lot of gray shirts that I know tend to come right back, and they'll go for a week, they'll go home for a week, they'll come back to that site.
I couldn't think of a better way to keep that sense of service and purpose going once you're out of the military, once you're no longer in a first responder, than doing something like Team Rubicon.
And they come in to help. That says a lot. That says they're still good people.
Such a great organization, and thank you to all the veterans out there. Well, coming up next on Weather Underground, we continue tracking dangerous severe weather in central Florida tonight. A tornado warning still in effect there for Manatee County, and that will continue until the top of the hour. Tornadoes will be possible in some of these outer bands of Tropical Storm Eta, which is working on its closest approach to Tampa. Landfall will be expected overnight tonight or early tomorrow morning. Stay with us.
Coming up right now on Weather Underground, Tropical Storm Eta set to make its second landfall in Florida overnight tonight. The Tampa area in the crosshairs for high wind and heavy rain, and we are live in Clearwater for you tonight, timing out the arrival and the dangers you should be aware of before it even makes landfall. And tornadoes not out of the question. Eta's rain bands will bring squally weather across this peninsula of Florida, so we're going to track that threat for you.
This hurricane season is so 2020, and we're not done yet. We're watching Invest 98L in the Caribbean trying to develop here and could threaten Central America in the coming days. You'll recall that that's how Eta started out. And on this Veterans Day, we're bringing you the inspiring story of Team Rubicon, an organization helping veterans find new purpose as they help hurricane victims clean up and rebuild. Weather Underground starts now.
Hi everyone, welcome in. You're watching Weather Underground. I'm Mike Bettison. Happy Veterans Day today.
Absolutely. We're very thankful for our veterans around the U.S. for their service and their sacrifice. I'm meteorologist Jackie Jarrett and for Alex Wilson tonight. We're also going to be on an extra hour late till 9 o'clock Eastern time as we show you the track of Tropical Storm Eta. And it continues, Mike, by the way, around the clock.
All right, tonight. All the way through landfall and beyond. You can come to us for the very latest. Weather Channel meteorologist, by the way, Mike Seidel in Clearwater Beach for us tonight. Mike, this is a beautiful beach, one of the more popular beaches in all of Florida. What's happening there on the ground right now?
It's the wind and the rain, and let's go right to the radar because we have a new tornado warning issued recently, and this is for the area southwest of St. Pete, and this tornado warning goes until 6:30. Having problems with my phone because it got wet. That's always an issue, so bear with me. Ports of Manatee County. Let me see if I can get this back up here. Nope, my phone I think is under the weather now. Here we go. Nope. Anyway, we'll just tell you about it. It goes till 6:30. Everything's rotating around Eta, and these are very quick spin-ups. And it's going to be near the Ruskin area about 25 after the hour. So that's the direction it's moving. We've had about a half a dozen of these No reports of any touchdowns. And again, they spin up very quickly. One of the warnings was based on a water spout coming on shore. Behind me is the Gulf of Mexico. As we lose the light, the big surf out there. Storm surge warning for this part of the coast with expectations at the worst case scenario above normally dry ground of a surge of 3 to 5 feet. And if you time that in with a high tide here, Clearwater, 8:45, high tide at Tampa Bay tonight, generally between about 11 and midnight, depending where you're sitting on Tampa Bay. And they did have the Skyway Bridge closed earlier today because of these winds. They've been gusting over 50, even 60 miles an hour from Punta Gorda up towards St. Pete. Here in the Tampa area, the airport's gusted between 40 and 50 miles an hour, and that's the kind of wind and weather we're going to see through the evening hours. But notice on the satellite, or I should say on the radar, the storm is going to pass by us off the coast and then hook in. It's going to take a northeast track inland and make a second landfall here in Florida around sunrise tomorrow morning. We'll have Jim Cantore and Reynolds Wolf up early, starting at 4 a.m. Eastern with coverage here from the west coast of Florida. But as it does head towards the coast, dry air and shear is going to continue to weaken it. So it's going to, just fall apart. And by later tomorrow, Mike, it's going to be out in the Atlantic, and it's not coming up the East Coast, and we say goodbye to that one. But in the meantime, next several hours, a bit gnarly here in the Tampa-St. Pete area. We got to get these bands through, the ones that are creating some issues with quick spin-ups and tornado warnings.
Yeah, a few issues still to contend with. I know this is not going to be a major disaster, but there could be some issues in some neighborhoods where they take on some water, even some coastal issues when you get the strongest surge that comes into Tampa Bay. Mike, thank you so much for that. Appreciate the report tonight. Let's update you on what's happening currently. A 70-mile-per-hour tropical storm. We feel like it's going to go through a weakening phase now through landfall and then beyond. North movement at 12 miles per hour currently, and pressure stands at 990 millibars. Of course, you're seeing some of the worst weather right now in the Tampa area. And I think this might be the worst that actually Eta dishes out for us here. We do have a tornado warning. This is just outside of Tampa and outside of Sarasota here. Manatee County under a tornado warning. Hillsborough County as well. In Parrish, in Ruskin, Mwama. You know what I'm trying to say here, folks. Mama. 6:30 p.m. is when we have the expiration on that. You can see on the velocities here, there are going to be maybe some elongated areas that have a little bit of spin within them. That's moving off to the northeast here pretty quickly tonight. Could come across 75 this evening. Down through South Florida, including around Homestead. This is going to include Miami-Dade County. We're under a severe thunderstorm warning here. That could potentially slide into Miami or into Fort Lauderdale as well. Just watching that one closely tonight, but bands of storms throughout the state this evening. Watch the low. Here comes the storm itself. The center of circulation sitting about here at 11 o'clock tonight. Then coming in as we go through the overnight, likely to be there as you wake up tomorrow morning. The winds will start to decrease here. We're going to encounter a little bit more interaction with land. That's going to weaken the storm, but we still have the possibility of some flooding. Would not rule out some intersections filling up with water, some hydroplaning on those roadways. Could see some of the canals fill up with some water as well as the surge comes in to the Tampa Bay area and even through southwest Florida as well. Naples, Fort Myers, maybe Port Charlotte as well. There's the system now way over here late tomorrow night in the Atlantic and moving away from land. So that's really the good news here, Jackie, is it's going to be pretty quick from this point going forward.
Absolutely. So a quick hitter, but very impactful right now in the Sunshine State. And we want to get the latest of what's happening in Florida. And so joining us now via Skype from Tallahassee is Florida Emergency Management Director Jared Moskovitz. Thanks so much for being with us tonight. Jared, where are the big hot spots that you're most concerned about with what's happening right now?
No, thank you for the opportunity. So obviously, we're tracking the storm, the Sarasota, Pinellas, Tampa Bay area, right now getting a lot of the good bands from the tropical storm. Obviously, as it continues to move up, we're worried about, Hernando, Pasco, and Citrus. The storm is obviously weakening. It was a hurricane earlier, now a tropical storm, and it'll continue to weaken through the rest of the day and this evening. But, that doesn't mean we can't have a tornado touchdown. So it still is obviously a situation that, we continue to monitor. Everyone needs to take the same safety precautions as if it was a Category 1 storm.
Jared, what would be your biggest concern this point going forward? Would it be flooding? Would it be power outages? What are you most concerned about having to respond to?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tornado at this point, quite frankly. I mean, look, there's about 20,000 people without power in the state. I expect that to increase, but, so far we're not seeing any major power outages. There'll be some flooding, between the storm surge on the coast of 3 to 5 feet in some limited areas, and obviously, between 6, 8, 9, 10 inches of rain. But, in these tropical storms, a tornado is really, your worst case scenario.
Going tonight, for sure, one of the big concerns that, it's after dark and people are going to be sleeping tonight, need a way to get alerted. Let's talk a little bit about other parts of the state that have already been hit by Eta. We had huge issues in southeastern Florida with the flooding and with some power outages there, too. Has that all been cleared up now?
Yeah, power's been completely restored in southeast Florida. There's still floodwaters down there. We're still doing a pumping mission. We got vac trucks down there. There's some areas that just don't have, regular drainage. They have swales, or they obviously, use lake systems. And so a lot of that, overflow, especially in Broward County. We got 18 inches of rain. I think there's a band right now that is, really close to the I-95 corridor, in a lot of those areas that got a tremendous amount of rain. So we still have ongoing missions of dewatering down in South Florida.
Jared, how big of a concern is it people being on the roads with a tropical storm coming in, gusty winds, but not to mention you've got some pretty heavy downpours associated with it, especially on the eastern side of this, which is, of course, where Florida is?
Yeah, earlier today we were very concerned because obviously, we saw the thing moving east, yesterday and then through the evening. But because people follow the center of the storm, and because obviously most of the weather is to the east, it's not a symmetrical storm. A lot of that weather was onshore, early today, and so people were driving through that in their commute, and I think probably people adjusted through the rest of the day with schools getting out and getting home safely. Now I think everyone's pretty much hunkered down, so we got through that. But this morning I was worried about that.
All right, well, good night to stay home for sure. Thanks so much, Jared Moskowitz, Florida Emergency Management Director, for being with us here tonight. All right, let's talk a little bit more about some of the wind gusts and some of the surge that we're going to be dealing with moving forward here. With Eta, we've had some really strong gusts already across the Tampa-St. Pete area that have exceeded 50 miles per hour. Here's a look at the current gusts. Naples up at 31. We've got nearly 30 here in Fort Myers, and there's Tampa proper at 20 mile per hour gusts. Now, South Florida, you're still getting in on some of this. Some areas that were hit hard by Eta as it was coming ashore across parts of the Keys. We still have a feeder band. We've got a big line moving here through the Keys and into southeastern parts of the state. Miami-Dade under a severe thunderstorm warning. That area of storminess could be producing some wind gusts around 60 miles per hour. A lot of lightning with these storms too, and some heavy downpours. So like Jared was telling us, stay off the roads here tonight, folks, for sure. The wind gusts not too bad here. Naples 31, we mentioned. West Palm Beach still at 24. And you can see those winds coming in a southerly direction right now, while our winds are more southeasterly, so still kind of pushing offshore here in Tampa, but that's going to change later on tonight. You'll have more of that onshore push that will continue into the early morning hours, so certainly going to have to watch that high tide that's going to be coming in about 11:30 later on tonight. There may be still some strong wind gusts that could reach 50, even 60 miles per hour, and I think between now and about midnight or so tonight is when those strongest winds are going to be affecting the Tampa Bay area. Still getting strong here in the early morning hours as it picks up into the Gainesville area, even Jacksonville, looking for morning gusts around 40 miles per hour. So not great travel conditions, but then this all moves on up into the Carolinas. It becomes their problem as this finally exits the state. And we can't wait for that. That's for sure, Mike.
Can't happen too soon, Jackie. Thank you. Let's go city by city, get some more specifics on what could happen for you here in Florida. Tampa, St. Pete's, Clearwater, all these places could have winds gusting likely in that 50 to 60 mile per hour range. Bradenton to Sarasota, you're going to start to see your winds back off first, but still 40 to 50 mile per hour winds this evening. Still very gusty. And here's the concern later tonight. Now we're talking 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning. To see the trajectory of the winds here coming right into Tampa Bay, that's when we might maximize the storm surge and winds here that could be gusting 40 to 50 miles per hour still. Look what happens overnight, though, and as we go through tomorrow morning, the winds about cut in half. Still, we've got the trajectory, so we're still going to be forcing water into Tampa Bay, but the winds are backing off quite a bit here by late tomorrow morning. I think power outages at that point will not be an issue any longer. And then watch through the day. Watch the winds turn light and they'll shift now. And so now all the surge goes back out, and we're going to be dealing with a much better evening tomorrow evening than we are this evening. Tropical storm warnings still remain in effect here from around Port Charlotte through Sarasota, Tampa, St. Pete up towards Cedar Key here. And tropical storm watch, by the way, goes all the way over toward St. Augustine tonight. Here's a look at the future radar. Come through Orlando, we'll have bands of thunderstorms that roll through. Wouldn't be surprised to see multiple bands and several inches of rainfall for us. Notice out toward Daytona, Titusville, these are all places where even midday tomorrow you're still dealing with some storms, then gradually improving through the afternoon and evening as the system itself, Jackie, exits its way out into the Atlantic.
Yeah, and the Carolina is still going to get hit with it at that time, so they need to be concerned about some heavy downpours. And we've got a lot of them already, even before we see the main impact coming in here from Eta. We've got some flash flood warnings that have been issued across parts of the Carolinas as well as into Virginia. We're zoomed in here across North Carolina into the Rocky Mountain, Wilson areas where a new flash flood warning has just been issued. Some really heavy rain has been coming down here the last hour or so, and more certainly on the way. We'll broaden out here to the bigger picture and look at this huge swath. This is a huge area of that moisture, which is spread over the entire area. So the ground already pretty saturated, and this is not going to stop anytime soon. Tough commute, New York, Philly, Baltimore, D.C., all along the I-95 corridor there, with rain continuing to come down here, reducing visibility and causing some ponding of water on the roadways here. We also have a flash flood warning for Appomattox, Campbell, and Pennsylvania counties here, just south of Lynchburg into Virginia. Radar estimating a good 2 inches of rain has come down, and more is on the way. And we even have some pretty good thunderstorms here trying to get going south of Macon, northwest of Atlanta. We've got some heavy downpours, and there you can see that warning again here near Rocky Mount and into the Wilson area. We'll take you into the Atlanta metro, Bartow and Gordon counties under that flash flood warning. This is a good night to just stay off the roads tonight, folks. No reason to go out there and risk it. The rain's coming down heavy. It's dark out. It's going to be tough to see. That moisture continues to funnel into the region through the night tonight, through the day tomorrow, and then we get that extra punch and lift coming in as Eta works its way closer towards the Carolinas offshore. So wide area tonight where flash flooding is going to be a good probability. And of course, Mike, we get a little more concerned with that terrain into parts of Virginia, into the western Carolinas that can really enhance that rainfall. But we could be talking about 5 to 8 inches of rain in spots before all is said and done.
It is a really alarming forecast when you think about it. Our soil moisture is very high here already, so adding more rain is insult to injury. Flood watches, flash flood watches in effect here, and truly includes almost the entire state of North Carolina. Nothing but heavy downpours and thunderstorms happening for us right now. Eastern North Carolina, we're in the bullseye for a lot of it here. And I want to show you the future radar, because watch what happens here. Over and over and over again, it rains. You're going to feel like you need to build an ark here, folks. It is just that bad. And as the front gets closer, that's when you might actually maximize some of your rain. And now through probably late tomorrow, maybe around midnight or so, you're still dealing with the rain. Won't completely clear you until overnight Friday. So there's a look at the forecast, and I mean, it truly, like, your eyes bug out of your head here. 5 to 7 inches of rain still to come here through tomorrow night along the I-95 corridor. You typically pick up that amount of rain in about 2 months' time. You're going to get it in 24 hours. Heavy rain, the Grand Strand down toward the low country here, Myrtle Beach to Charleston, a little bit less than the capital, maybe 1 to 2 inches coming your way. Not to mention the flood danger with an onshore flow at the coastline, Jackie, so inland flooding and coastal flooding likely.
All right, well, ahead on Weather Underground, we're going to have much more on Tropical Storm Eta and the timing of landfall overnight tonight into early tomorrow morning. Plus, it's been a record-breaking hurricane season with all the landfalls. Tampa has been in the clear until now. We're going to examine why.
This year.
This record-breaking hurricane season isn't over. The threat from Eta is still complex and dangerous to the southeast.
Big rainfall stretching from Miami all the way over to the west coast of Florida.
No one can cover this historic hurricane season better than the Weather Channel. Get the information you need to stay safe all week long, right here on the Weather Channel.
Good evening. Welcome back to Clearwater Beach. I'm meteorologist Mike Seidel, and once again, we're dealing with Eta. This is round two. We had round one earlier over the weekend, the first part of the week. South Beach, I was in Miami. We had a cruise in the Keys. Then it went out into the Gulf, became a hurricane, became a tropical storm, was a hurricane again for, 6 hours this morning and early afternoon. Now it's back to a tropical storm, and you can see on the radar what's going on. It's spinning its way off the coast. It's just southwest now of the Tampa Bay area. It's going to go by here later on this evening, overnight, and make another landfall. In the meantime, we've had upwards of 3+ inches of rain around the Tampa Bay area. We've had about a half a dozen tornado warnings. One continues right now, and we've got all the standing water, so ponding. The ground is saturated. You can see what happens. And so watch the roadways tonight. Best bet is if you don't have to travel, just stay home, because these squalls come through and the intersections fill up, and you get the ponding, and again, the old turnaround, don't drown. Although no current flash flood warnings, we do have the flood watch that goes right on through tonight and through Thursday. So Jackie Jarris, let's time it out for the second landfall, which is going to be in an area where not a whole lot of people live, but it will officially be another landfall.
Yeah, it will too for the state of Florida after getting missed for so much of the rest of the season. That tornado warning that Mike was just talking about too, the good news is that's been allowed to expire, and there's no watches for tornadoes right now, but we'll still have to really watch some of those outer bands for a few spin ups and just know that that isolated threat at least is still ongoing here for tonight. Got a tropical storm here on our hands, 70 miles per hour. It's about 60 miles to the west of the Tampa Bay area right now. It's moving in a northerly direction. You can see the large center here pretty easily on Doppler radar, and the feed of all that moisture that's affecting pretty much all of the peninsula here tonight. So even though it's on shore, we're really getting the brunt of this system because it is a right-loaded storm for sure, and that's why we've seen torrential downpours and these gusty winds as much as 50-55 miles per hour across the Tampa Bay area. Occasionally within this line here for you, Miami-Dade, we've had a few warnings on this. Some of those thunderstorms have been strong enough to produce winds that could create a little bit of damage. So no warnings there right now, but just a heads up that that's a pretty intense line, and that's expected to continue over the next couple of hours. So Mike was asking about the timing of all of this. There you can see that center. It looks like it could be making landfall sometime early tomorrow morning, give or take either side of sunrise, and then we'll watch that move its way across the peninsula, but still bring some pretty heavy rain from time to time. Flash flooding a good possibility for about the southern half of the state. So this includes you in a place like Orlando, Tampa, Sarasota, all the way down into the Keys, where we'll be watching for that risk. Keep in mind, a lot of southeastern Florida already very saturated from recent rains, although Tampa could take on a little bit of rainfall. We're starting to get some reports across the region of 3 to 4 inches that we've had since midnight this morning. Here's a look at the future radar as we head towards Thursday night into Friday morning. We watch that move offshore, still affecting the Carolinas, so that's something to keep an eye out for. And just a heads up for a place like Jacksonville, you're going to be watching the storm moving very likely right on top of you later on Thursday night. That's when you're going to see some of your strongest winds with this event, but you've got some coastal issues out ahead of that. So there you can see where we've got the tropical storm warnings that remain in place. The hurricane watches that were issued earlier have been allowed to expire, and just giving you the idea of the timing of these winds. At least we've got a storm that's on the move here. That's a little bit of good news, that this thing is going to keep going, that trough certainly picking it up. We'd like to say that this is the last storm that we're going to have to deal with this year, but not so sure about that. We've got a couple areas to keep our eye on, Mike.
Amazing what this season has produced and what it may still produce, Jackie. Isn't it just stunning? All right, we know we got Tropical Storm Eta out there. We also have Theta. So that's the one that really set all the records, Theta. But now you look toward the Caribbean, Invest 98L may be the real troublemaker here, because Eta will be moving out, Theta's moving away, and Eta is moving in this direction, or 98L is moving in this direction, much like Eta did. Let's take you over to Theta here, 60-mile-per-hour tropical storm, becoming sheared a little bit here, east-northeast movement at 13, and it's going to continue to work its way eastbound here. Could potentially affect some islands, but ultimately becoming a weaker system and then slowing down and turning off to the north. We don't think a major player as far as weather goes. This one, however, maybe an 80% chance that Invest 98L becomes our next named storm potentially. If it does, it'd be Iota, the next name in the Greek alphabet here. Flash flood watches in effect here, the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, and the system likely to push in a similar direction that Eta did. Usually this time of year, very warm sea surface temperatures, usually a low wind shear environment, usually an area where systems can really gain some strength here, as Eta did, eventually becoming a Category 4 hurricane. But where did Eta make landfall? Right here in Nicaragua. Look where this one is headed. That is not a good forecast. Well, still to come here on Weather Underground. We've got more in our top story. Florida bracing for Eta, the dangers you need to be aware of before its arrival, and tracking severe weather through the peninsula, all caused by Eta as well. We're back after this.
It's really been a crazy storm to watch. Wind gusts could even reach hurricane force. We're already seeing in southwest Florida some of the storm surge and the rising water levels.
A lot of battering waves, some strong wind gusts, and some damage even from Tropical Storm Eta. Thanks so much for staying with us here on Weather Underground as we track the tropical storm. I'm Jackie Jarris.
Hi everyone, I'm Mike Bettis. We have live coverage for you tonight on the Weather Channel around the clock as we get closer and closer to the landfall. But truly, Jackie, the worst of it may be right now along the west coast of Florida.
Yeah, in the next few hours for sure. As we track Tropical Storm Eta, we want to get you caught up with what we know right now. Eta is moving north along the west coast of Florida at 12 miles an hour, maintaining wind speeds around 70 miles per hour. The storm is bringing the Florida Gulf Coast heavy rain, gusty winds, and power outages are beginning to mount in the west central parts of the state. A local state of emergency has been declared in Pinellas County, which includes Tampa, Clearwater, and St. Petersburg. Our Weather Channel meteorologist Mike Seidel is watching the progress of Eta from Clearwater Beach, and he is joining us live now from there with the latest on the storm. It sounds like the rain is picking up a bit there, Mike.
Well, the rain continues to come and go. It will be hard at times, and you can see on the radar how it's rotating around Eta, which is going to go by us, our latitude, in 4 or 5 hours, and then head north, and then that will really shut down the rain, and the winds will start to back off. We're still gusting over 40 at Sarasota, Bradenton, and I did kind of a back of the envelope addition. Their rainfall now about 4 1/4 inches there. Here in Tampa, not nearly as wet. In fact, today, through 5 p.m., a daily record of 1.36 inches, and I'm thinking back to covering this part 1 over in Miami and Fort Lauderdale, where with the rain from Eta just through a couple of days ago, they were up over 85 inches of rain in Fort Lauderdale for the year. Right now here, we're at about 40 inches of rain. So it gives you an idea of how different the totals have been so far in 2020 between the west coast here in Tampa and the southeast coast around Miami and Fort Lauderdale. So rain bands wrapping around. If they move over the same area, what we call training, we could get some localized flash flooding. And obviously, we've got ponding on the highways. But again, the flood watch will stay up until 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, because we could get several more inches of rain, especially in those bands. As it pulls away, the winds will begin to back off, but still gust overnight tonight, 40, 45, maybe another 50-mile-an-hour gust. So it's not going to be so much structural damage. But again, as Jackie mentioned, we do have some power outages to report on the west coast of Florida. Mike Bettis, they'll take it. You know, they've been very, very lucky in Tampa. How many years? It's been a long, long time since they've had a direct hit from a hurricane. You know, we thought Charlie was going to come right up here. Right. What was that, Friday the 13th, August of 2004, but it made that right turn and never got here. So they've been really living a charmed life If you think about the entire East Coast and Gulf Coast, there are a few places that haven't been directly impacted by a hurricane.
Mike, I believe it's been about 100 years. It's amazing to think that they've gone that stretch of time without a direct hit. Mike, thanks so much for the update there. And it is definitely raining to beat the band for us here around the Tampa Bay area. 70-mile-per-hour tropical storm Eta right now. The center actually sits off the coast about right here, but all the forceful weather is really occurring right now along the west coast of Florida at this point. You take a look at what's happening right in Tampa. Well, look at this heavy rain. Some of the rainfall rates here are going to be about an inch plus per hour here, leading to the possibility of some flooding. We've got favorable soil here. We get sandy soil that tends to drain pretty well. But the other thing is you're going to start to see now a favorable push of water up through Tampa Bay that's going to cause a little bit of flooding. So we're worried about the coastal flooding through the bay. But look at some of this heavy rain now to come into St. Pete and around maybe Clearwater as well. Down through South Florida, that's a pretty intense line of storms right there. This is a really soaked area. So unfortunately, more rain here spells problems for us. We had that first round that came through with Eta a couple days ago, and that really caused big time issues. Now that is not helping matters at all. All right, so here sits Eta, eventually does one of these, but the landfall, I think, is almost kind of one of those wonk kind of things, because as it makes landfall, it'll be weakening. The rain may start to back off. The winds may start to back off. So I truly feel like now and over the next couple of hours is when you're going to have some of the worst weather. Landfall happens around sunrise tomorrow, give or take an hour or two. The possibility of flooding is still there across South and Central Florida, I-95, 75, and say I-4 as well. Pick the low up from there. Where do we take it? Off the coast into the Atlantic, looking to be sitting off the coast of South Carolina tomorrow around midnight, taking it away from the Carolinas. We're back after this.
Welcome back to Weather Underground. The heavy rains that hit West Florida during Eta's approach flooded several streets here in Sarasota. Many streets were actually completely covered with water, making it nearly impossible to tell how deep it might be in places. Sarasota picking up roughly 4 inches of rainfall now. Just a big reminder, don't drive through this stuff, right? Turn around, don't drown. Sun going down, it's getting dark out, winds are gusty. This is not a night to be out on the roads. Thanks for being with us through our special extended coverage tonight with Tropical Storm Eta. And this is not just a Florida problem. This is going to continue to bring some heavy rain across parts of the southeast, through the Carolinas, into the mid-Atlantic states. And I know you're getting hit hard right now, but we're getting that 1-2 punch from that cold front and the tropical moisture that's feeding into the area. In fact, we've got scattered flash flood warnings across the region already, and we could be talking about an additional 3 to as much as 8 inches of rain before all is said and done as we round out our work week here. Couple of different things are working into play. We've been talking about that jet stream, that dip, and that surface cold front associated with that. We've got Eta, which is helping to draw moisture in from the region as well. And we've got high pressure, which is off the coast, which is pumping in those winds in the same direction. And so it just creates this conveyor belt of tropical moisture, and that's why your rain has been so widespread today and so heavy at times as well. You know, you look at Eta and the concentration of all of that, you know, that's kind of nothing in a way compared to some of the rainfall rates and the totals that we've been seeing into the Carolinas and Virginia. We've got some flash flood warnings in effect just outside of the Lynchburg area right now, including you in Appomattox, Pittsylvania, and the Campbell areas. Radar is indicating you've had 1 to 3 inches of rainfall there. Heavy downpours outside of Columbia, South Carolina. We've had some heavy rain, especially north and the west of the Atlanta metro area. And this is all pushing up and down the I-95 corridor right during those busy commute hours, unfortunately. So expect rain to continue to get squeezed out of all of this as we continue through the day on Thursday, even into Friday morning. Just a big heads up for that flash flood risk. Well, tropical downpours certainly makes for potentially hazardous driving conditions. But as Jen Carfagno reminds us, at this time of the year, when you have autumn leaves on the roads too, even a little bit of rain means drivers need to beware.
Let's talk about travel. You know, whether you're going back and forth from work or driving to actually go get a view of that great fall color, you know the weather is always a factor, even on a sunny day. So we're going to talk travel because in the fall there's a complicating factor, and that is the leaves. Let's take this car out into reality, or augmented reality, and talk about how the weather impacts your travel. Now, even when there is no weather falling from the sky on dry conditions, it takes about 80 feet to stop your car if you're driving at 45 miles per hour. And that, of course, is dependent on what kind kind of tire tread you have, what kind of road conditions they're like, but still 80 feet. Now let's factor in the weather. And, you know, when you've got these great leaves on the trees, you know the color's gorgeous, but all of a sudden they're going to come down and they'll cover up the roadway. They'll cover up any potholes or any bad road conditions that are out there. And also when it starts raining, now we got some complications. So the rain falls, you've got your wipers on, you've got your headlights on, of course, if your wipers are on, and now the leaves start getting wet. And you've heard the saying that wet leaves are slippery as ice. Well, indeed they are. Why is ice slippery? Well, there's actually a film of water right on top of ice. Same thing happens actually with your car's tires on these leaves. So take a look. You've got the car's tires that are hitting the leaves, and the leaves are on top of the road. Leaves have a waxy coating on both sides of them, and that actually repels water. Trees get their water from their roots, right? Not from their leaves. So the waxy coating repels water. That makes leaves very slippery. And leaves slip on leaves. Leaves slip on the road. Your car's tire slips on the leaves. And when there's layers of these wet leaves, the slick factor is exponential. You try to brake on this, you see the swerve, right? All of a sudden, you more than double your stopping distance if you're traveling at 45 miles per hour. And that's not a clean stop, is it? So if you're traveling, even if it stops raining and you've got leaves on the road, you know that it takes hours for wet leaves to dry out. You need to slow down, both hands on the wheel. Make sure you have some good tire tread on your car, and make sure you stay vigilant, because even when it's not raining, when you've got leaves on the roads, it could be slick as ice, especially if they're wet.
Well, we know that one of the places where streets are wet, Carolinas right now. That's a look at Wilmington, where as much as another 4 inches of rain could be coming your way. You're under a coastal flood advisory and a flash flood watch. At the same time here, look at this rain to come now through tomorrow night. It's just mind-boggling to think that along the I-95 corridor, we could be dealing with another 5 to 7 inches of rain, roughly 2 months of rain happening in the next 24 hours. Already raining hard for us here. Fayetteville, up through Raleigh and Rocky Mount right now. And look at this future radar. I think this tells you a lot. It's round after round after round. And a lot of these are 1 to 2 inch rainfall events individually. Then the front gets closer and really start to pump out a ton of rain midday tomorrow. Look at this. I mean, we are just inundated in eastern North Carolina, eventually clearing out by very late tomorrow, more likely Friday morning. But there's a look at Raleigh. We're in it. The thick of it is going to be through the day tomorrow. Temperatures will be comfortable, but the danger is going to be there with rising water in many neighborhoods. And still to come on this show tonight, veterans teaming up with Team Rubicon to help storm victims in the Gulf. We'll honor them on this Veterans Day. Welcome back, everyone, as we track Tropical Storm Eta for you tonight. It is a 70-mile-per-hour tropical storm. We're getting another update here shortly from the National Hurricane Center, sitting just west of Tampa right now, with most of the damage being done at this point. Some of the worst weather's happening right now before landfall even occurs, and I think that as the system eventually goes north and makes a turn into the Big Bend of Florida, the weather is at least the intensity of storms we believe is going to come down a little bit, and maybe even the effects of the storm are going to come down a little bit. But we're in the thick of it currently with really heavy rain around Tampa and St. Pete. We've had some really strong storms through Sarasota. A lot of the storms are going to ride up 75 and I-4 for you tonight. We are worried about flooding in and around Tampa. One of the reasons being that water can travel really fast through the sandy soil. Now, it helps drain that soil, and rainfall rates could be intense, but it can be filtered out, and that's good. But we can also have, we've got a lot of canals, and we've got a lot of homes that are on water, and that can be an issue for us here. Still, intense rain can cause some urbanized flooding. We know that we've got a lot of people here in Tampa and St. Pete, a lot of pavement, a lot of impervious surfaces where the water sits up on top and doesn't drain away easily. Not to mention, we're going to get some flow that comes into Tampa Bay. That could cause some water at the coastlines here. That could cause some issues with some storm surge flooding. Clearwater to Tampa to Sarasota, some really heavy rain for us later on tonight as well. Likely starting to clear out a little bit come tomorrow morning as the storm is well off to your north. I don't think it's a clear day for you tomorrow, but improved weather. The winds taper, the rain tapers, and those are all good things. And the wind changes directions. The storm surge, not an issue any longer, too. The rain still to come. Another 3 inches is still possible here, especially north side of Tampa and maybe around Clearwater as well. All right, there's a look at our storm surge potential, and it is 3 to 5 feet here along the west coast of Florida and then up into Tampa Bay as well. There are some areas where we're getting some minor storm surge down through southwest Florida and maybe north of Tampa, as much as 4 feet here, Jackie, but ultimately a relatively minor coastal event.
Indeed. Well, on this Veterans Day, we honor those who have served in the military and now doing their part to help with disaster relief with Team Rubicon. We caught up with the gray shirts hard at work in Lake Charles, Louisiana.
My name is Shane Fruget. This is our family home. This is the remnants of what's left from the last 4 or 5 major hurricanes.
It's been months since Hurricanes Laura and Delta tore through Lake Charles, Louisiana, and homeowners like Shane are still dealing with the piles of debris and damage left behind. Volunteer organization Team Rubicon seeks to help residents just like these with their teams of mostly military veteran volunteers who are looking to offer a little relief.
I think a lot of veterans, they lose that closeness to their teammates, their coworkers, and everything they had. And when they separate and get out, they kind of feel that they don't belong anymore.
Team Rubicon gives these veterans a way to reconnect.
Although I am still serving and stuff, I've got the first responders that are also with us and the civilians, and we all integrate together and leverage each other's expertise.
Because we said we were going to do it from the ladder.
They call their volunteers gray shirts, and they aren't known by their rank, just their first names.
Service comes up, rank almost never does.
With many volunteers having a military background, they are uniquely prepared for this type of work, even if they don't know how to operate a chainsaw or tarp a roof.
When they come to communities like this, they're really able to dig in and help communities that are impacted on their worst days because they already have that sense of service and that sense of selflessness.
Many are regulars with Team Rubicon, and some are relatively new, like Mike, who just retired from 29 years in law enforcement.
Being on the job so long, it's great to be a new guy again. It's fun to be starting over and learning stuff that I had no knowledge about.
Offering help to those in need has its benefits, not just for the residents, but for the veterans as well.
Tacking it down, rolling it down.
They've really gained that sense of purpose and that sense of community again, and then they stick. That's why we have growing numbers in our organization, and we're able to continue to recruit and to grow our force so that we can help communities.
Many volunteers say the hardest part isn't doing the labor, it's having to leave with so much work left to be done.
A lot of gray shirts that I know tend to come right back, and they continuously, they'll go for a week, they'll go home for a week, they'll come back to that site.
I couldn't think of a better way to keep that sense of service and purpose going once you're out of the military, once you're no longer in a first responder, than doing something like Team Rubicon.
And they come in to help. That says a lot. That says they're still good people.
Such a great organization. A big thanks to all those vets and all vets and their families as well. Coming up next on Weather Underground, we're continuing to track dangerous severe weather in Central Florida tonight. Heavy rain and gusty winds from Tropical Storm Eta.
Coming up tonight on Weather Underground, Tropical Storm Eta set to make its second landfall in Florida tonight. The Tampa area in the crosshairs for a high wind, heavy rain, and we're live in Clearwater tonight. We're timing its arrival and the dangers you should be aware of before landfall. Tornadoes not out of the question. We've got some heavy rain bands that could bring squally weather through the peninsula, and we're tracking that threat.
This hurricane season is so 2020, and we're not done yet. We're watching Invest 98L in the Caribbean trying to develop a 90% chance now that it could threaten Central America in the coming days. You recall that that's how Eta started out. And on this Veterans Day, we're bringing you the inspiring story of Team Rubicon, an organization helping veterans find new purpose as they help hurricane victims clean up and rebuild. Weather Underground starts now.
We're glad you're with us tonight for Weather Underground. Happy Veterans Day. I'm Mike Bettis.
And I'm Jackie Jarris. We've got a lot to be thankful for tonight, especially to our veterans around the U.S. for their service, their sacrifice, and to their families as well. We're with you an extra hour here tonight on the show as we track Tropical Storm Eta. Dr. Nab is on after us, and we're going to go all night long because we've got a landfall coming up.
Yeah, landfall likely happen very late tonight or very early tomorrow morning. And one of the places being hit right now is Clearwater Beach, Florida. Meteorologist Mike Seidel is there. Mike, the entire Tampa-St. Pete area getting drenched tonight. I want to ask you about the winds. How bad have the winds been for you this evening?
Not too bad. You know, we're gusting 30, 35 miles an hour. It's like a gusty thunderstorm, but not, not severe. We have had gusts today as high as 60. Earlier down in Punta Gorda, St. Pete has gusted to 55. That's about it. That has knocked out some power, but you can get a sense of all the rain and, it just collects in these low-lying areas. So you got ponding on the highways, and it will drain off eventually. We've got the flood watch. That goes until 1 o'clock tomorrow. Let's look at the radar, and you can see there's a pretty strong band just to our south. I don't know if it's going to rotate in here or just stay just off to our south and then west off the coast. And with a 7 p.m. advisory, they placed the center of Eta due west of Tampa by about 55 miles. So it's not far from here because we're west of Tampa by, 15 or so miles. And it's going to go on by. And once it goes on by, the worst of the weather will wrap up. You can already see down to the south how the bands are thinning out and it's a little drier. Drier has been wrapping into the system, and that really prevented it from strengthening anymore. We had so many storms this year that have just really ramped up right before landfall. This time around, fortunately, with the dry air and the shear, after all, it is almost mid-November. You can see some of the video we shot earlier today. The torrential downpours coming through. We've had over 4 inches of rain in Sarasota, Bradenton. They've been gusting in the low 40s. And that's going to be the trend for the next couple of hours. But the trend also is, as it continues moving north at 10 to 15 miles an hour, it's going to take its rain with it. It's lopsided. It's asymmetric. So you got the center and you got most of the rain on the east and north side, which we see a lot of times on the east coast. And that keeps it offshore. But when you have the system on this side of Florida in the Gulf of Mexico, we get the rain and the wind. So Mike Bettis, it's going to be okay. As we mentioned earlier, they haven't had a direct hit from a hurricane in about 100 years. Yeah. So this is easy to take. And tomorrow morning, they may have to pick up some palm fronds. There's some power out. But all in all, just kind of a rainy, breezy, at times windy evening. There's a pretty good gust of wind coming through the palm trees here at Clearwater Beach.
Considering what it could have been, Mike, this is just a glancing blow in probably most people's eyes there. Thank goodness, something we can manage. Mike, thank you for that. Want to get you an update on the newest advisory that's coming from the Hurricane Center. Wind speed hasn't changed, still sitting at 70 miles per hour. Pressure's come up a little bit, so I think maybe in the next advisory we'll see the winds maybe come down slightly. Moving north at 12 miles per hour, you can see where the center sits right about here, and eventually we're going to see one of these coming in north of Tampa and then slicing across the state. We've got a lot of rain happening for us right now across the west coast of Florida, and it at times could be producing some flooding. So be aware of that huge slug of rain about to come into St. Pete and Clearwater here. So I think you might see Mike's shot get incrementally worse here over the next, say, 20 minutes or so. Then there's heavy rain over Tampa Bay about to come into Tampa, and I think that could cause some localized flooding. Really concerned about that band right in there. That's the one that's almost coming into the beaches now. That's going to really really hammer us here. We've also got some bands now across South Florida, including near the I-95 corridor, places that were hit hard by the first round of Eta. When it came into the Keys, we had double-digit rainfalls here in South Florida, so adding this to that is not welcome at all. Let's show you the future radar here. That's where the low sits right there now. Watch where it heads to, okay? I'm going to keep that there and show you over the next couple of hours. There's not a ton of movement, slightly off to the north here. And then as we go through tomorrow morning, now the low's making landfall here, so you're going to get a general motion in this direction. The winds will start to back off for you in Tampa and Orlando, but the winds will pick up for you in maybe a Daytona Beach or maybe a St. Augustine and a Jacksonville, as well as the rainfall. Possible flooding, I don't think it's extreme, but watch for some roadways to fill up with some water, especially low-lying intersections or low-lying neighborhoods. All right, let's take it forward from there. Let's go through the afternoon. Things improve pretty dramatically across Florida, and by tomorrow late, now we're talking past midnight tomorrow night, low sits way over here, and it's working its way away from the coastline. And look at Florida, much improved for the second half of your day tomorrow. We know that Eta already causing some power outages across the Sunshine State, not extreme. Earlier, we spoke with Florida Emergency Management Director Jared Moskowitz, who shared his concerns.
There's about 20,000 people without power in the state. I expect that to increase, but so far we're not seeing any major power outages. There'll be some flooding, between the storm surge on the coast of 3 to 5 feet in some limited areas, and obviously, between 6, 8, 9, 10 inches of rain. But in these tropical storms, a tornado is really your worst case scenario.
Well, knock wood, right now, no tornado warnings that are in effect, but the winds may be picking up here in short order. And Mike was just showing you the radar of that heavy rain he thinks that's going to be affecting Mike Seidel and Clearwater here shortly. I'm also tracking that line for the threat of some of the strongest wind gusts that we've seen so far tonight. Radar is estimating that just offshore, those winds are about 60-mile-per-hour gusting. So that's going to be working its way up towards Clearwater potentially here within the next half an hour. In the meantime, gusts have been pretty frequent, around 30 miles per hour or so today. There have been some gusts that have occasionally been stronger. This line that we continue to track across southeastern Florida into Miami near Fort Lauderdale, that could produce some winds around 40 miles per hour. Certainly don't want to get any of the rain to go along with that, but it's really a little bit closer up towards the Bay Area where the worst of the winds are bearing down as the center of that storm just to the west of Tampa. So it's, almost the equivalent of an eye wall. It's not a hurricane, but that's where we're seeing the strongest interior winds and rainfall. So let's track this out here. That's the current conditions. We'll put you through hour by hour, and our computer models are showing that winds could get as strong as 40 to 50 miles per hour at times throughout this region. And this is likely going to continue through about midnight or so. Landfall likely happening early in the morning hours in a fairly unpopulated area. So that's some good news. But notice on the backside of this, we're still going to get some pretty decent gusts. A place like Gainesville into Jacksonville, this is going to move right over you tomorrow morning. So the winds are going to be between about 35 and 40 miles per hour at times. Spotty damage to trees, that's going to be a possibility, and a few power outages as well. So the power outages have been fairly minimal so far, less than 20,000 across the state. The water is also something that we're going to be watching. And now Tampa, that storm's starting to pull up to the north of you, and we're watching those winds start to come in more from a southeasterly direction. So we have more of that onshore push, and the storm surge warning will continue into tomorrow. All right, well, Tampa is one of those areas that is particularly vulnerable to tropical weather. Meteorologist Alex Wilson explains why.
Tampa, Florida is very vulnerable to hurricanes. Many counties in the region are surrounded by water on up to 3 sides. The Gulf is relatively shallow. During a storm, the surge is pushed higher and higher. Once the water moves into Tampa Bay, it gets stuck. It has nowhere to go but up and over the land. An 1848 storm was believed to have only been a Category 1. If that happened again, let alone a Category 3 or 4, the water would be over a person's head and the damage would be staggering. An evacuation in this area could be a nightmare. The population here has grown by 600% since 1950. That's a lot of people that have to get to high ground on relatively few highways. Timing in an evacuation is very critical. If people do not respond quickly, roads become backed up and leaving becomes difficult. Most of the 3 million residents have never seen a hurricane in this area and may not understand the threat. Officials urge for residents to take threats seriously and move quickly when they say you need to go. Routes headed north and east out of Tampa will be jammed in any hurricane evacuation. And any hurricane making landfall near here will likely be going north and east as well.
All right, so let's take you through the cities here and give you some timing on when to expect the worst of it. All right, so right now truly is when some of the worst of weather is hitting you in here at Tampa, St. Pete. Winds could be gusting 40 to 60 miles per hour, mostly winds out of the south here this evening. As we go through the next couple of hours, still very gusty winds. The trajectory of those winds may change a little later tonight, and we'll get more of a surge into Tampa Bay itself, winds 40 to 50 here. Overnight and early tomorrow, now the sun has come up and we're just before lunch hour. Still, we've got winds that are forcing the water into Tampa Bay. There still could be some right at the coastline issues, but the winds are starting to back off, maybe cut in half from what you'll see tonight. Then let's go through the second half of your day tomorrow, and maybe just after dinner time tomorrow, winds now light coming out of the northwest. The system's now in the Atlantic, and a much improved forecast for you here with very little in the way